by this point, Token Druid.
And one of the ways to work out who is favoured in this sort of matchup when the lineups are kind of similar is to look at the one deck that's different and put them against each other. So in this case, it would be the Paladin versus the Druid, if it comes down to that. And the Paladin's quite a big favourite in that one. That would be my quick way of working out who's favoured. There's a lot more to it than that, of course.
I agree. I think Secret Paladins have been favored against Token Druid for a very long time. Oh My Yogg is devastating in that matchup. And the Paladin nowadays is also just running a lot more buff cards. But for now, we shall focus on Rogue versus Mage. This is one that I feel has been debated for quite some time. But the more I play the Rogue and the higher up in the ranks I get, I feel Mage is very strong in the matchup. They just send everything face. And if they have the early flow, not much the Rogue can do.
Yeah, and backed up with that one shooting star that you talked about is actually a reasonable difference here as well to normal mages. It's just that little tiny bit early, cheap action to get rid of some of mage stuff. And as you can see, blitzchung has drawn the devolving, although he hasn't drawn much else. So it might be a bit of a slow one.
You can see blitzchung coined the flow all right with either pinging on this turn or going Runed Orb, but of course the Cult Neophyte shuts off his Runed Orb option. The priority is just to get discounts on as many cards as possible, whereas for Sif, he is trying to build enough pressure such that blitzchung doesn't necessarily just have time to shoot an Apexis Blast to the face and close off with a couple fireballs. And the Kazakus in Sif's hand will definitely help with that. From turn 4 onward, his curve looks pretty solid. The problem is no Mankrik, which is ideal for this turn, and I feel is essential for Rogue's pressure in almost every matchup.
You may have to consider going for Neophyte here again and just work out what blitzchung can do to him with the only one spell in a turn, because he's going to want to go to the Golem probably on 4 into, if he's lucky, double 5s on turn 5, or even a buff on turn 5 if any of this survives that long. And it's pretty much where you want to be as the Rogue, but it still might not be enough.
Yeah, I agree that Neophyte on this turn, if it comes down, the Prize Plunder alongside it makes a lot of sense, because at 3 mana, the breakpoint you shut off is Combustion unless it was discounted by Incanter's Flow. And blitzchung by this point has drawn less cards post-flow than he has cards in hand from pre-flow. So I do like the idea from Sif just to curve out. He can bother with the card draw a little bit later, because these first few turns are the window for him to get the damage in. It doesn't feel ideal to go Neophyte this early, but I feel it's the way his hand is just aligned.
Shadow Step's a massive deal if he can get, depending what he gets here, if he can get a drop that gives two minions, he can just bounce that back next turn and make 2 more minions, but didn't get it, so now he might be tempted to bounce the Kazakus instead.
Right, and he gets very bad options here. These are all reactive, and blitzchung has not played Font of Power. He, as we can see, it doesn't even have Apexis Blast just yet. So from Sif's perspective, I think he would have wanted either the proactive golem, which copies itself, or the one that draws cards. These, this one looks like just a plain old 5/5, which is really not great. And meanwhile, blitzchung has assembled a lot of removal, some burn, and most importantly, the Spring Water.
To make a wager, friend.
Yeah, and because Sif wanted to maintain the board pressure, he didn't really want to bounce the Kazakus back to hand, so he did not do that. And of course now he's left with a Shadow Step that's going to be a bit irritating. But there is hope going into next turn with this Secret Passage.
True. He has this dilemma as Rogue where you have an option to technically just tempo out the field contact, and even if it doesn't stick, he still has Greater Golem and Secret Passage. But every time I've done that as Rogue, I feel like I wish I held on to the contact, because now all these garbage Guardian Aug merchants that I'm top decking aren't really helping. Problem is, he knows that he's on a very, very short clock against Mage.
How about play the contact and Shadow Step it so that next turn you've got a lot of mana with your Secret Passage?
That does look pretty good. It is a nice trick that you can do to kind of just, it's like playing a Mana Biscuit this turn.
Quiet.
And he's going to go for that. So next turn he's relying on the Secret Passage getting him plenty of battle cries and combos to draw half of his deck, or a good chunk of it anyway.
And blitzchung will be very aware that a big push onto the board will be coming soon. I don't think it's any sweat off his back, though. He has tons of card draw. He can kind of just prepare for the storm that Sif has put together because, importantly, because Sif hasn't played Mankrik, the deluge of card draw that will maybe be coming next turn is not actually going to deal that much immediate damage to blitzchung.
And he's going to have the other issue that he may not have that much health of minions on board, which means that the masks become very, very powerful. You fend off the mask to some degree just by having health on the board. It kind of adds health to your health total by doing that.
Flame Strike as well. blitzchung, just considering if he wanted to Brain Freeze at the last spot there, but I think prioritizing card draw is something that good mage players do when they get the chance. He is just cashing in Devolving Missiles to turn this into a guaranteed 1-1, which I think makes a lot of sense. His mana is well spoken for the next 2 turns.
Okay, well, Secret Passage without the contact, just going for it. Oh.
Not gonna lie, I was expecting contact if this was going to be a passage turn, but maybe Sif is just trying to get, say, Swindle off of this or card generation off of that and then start off the field contact train. It's kind of like saying he gets 2 rounds of value if he does those things separately. And he did get decent results from this, but it's so easy for blitzchung to clean up. He doesn't even necessarily need to. It's very little pressure.
Another round there where he can't be masked, realistically, because that mask needs to go face or the mage does start to run out of damage. One of the things about the mage that is slightly weak and people are getting better at taking advantage of is the fact that they don't really have much more damage than the 30. They don't sort of have 70 damage like mage decks of old. If you can stop one of the masks or steal a fireball or something, things can get tricky for the mage to finish it off sometimes.
And also the mask there looked very unplayable because of the efficient Octobot that blitzchung definitely does not want to proc, knowing that there's already a field contact in hand. That sounds like a recipe for disaster. He still has enough mana care of refreshing spring water to go Flame Strike if he wants to, but now that he has Apexis Blast, I think that plus Ice Barrier is a much better use of resources, and he can hold on to Flame Strike for next turn. The mini mage also looks really strong here.
Yeah, he's just going to tidy up what he can, saving the blast for a turn. I like the blast as well, but this does get rid of more minions, so I understand.
I guess everything's earmarked for the face, Lorinda. What this does is removes a bit of health and most importantly the Octobot so that either Mask or Flame Strike can get big impact next turn. If iGSyf goes with kind of a small board again this turn, then blitzchung can respond with Mask with the lab partner. But if it is kind of a beefier board, say play the Golem, then he can go Flame Strike.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, teaching Mage to beginners 101, if it says minion on it, point it at a minion. If it doesn't, point it at their face. It's like, that's how you play the spells. So yeah, he's sticking to the absolute elementary way to play it. It does make a lot of sense, really.
Very true. iGSyf showing a lot of patience. Again, his Golem is reactive. That is really not great at this point. And so that gives blitzchung, I feel, a pretty simple mask turn.
Yeah, we'll get 5 through to the face and clear the board, most likely. And it's not a disaster if it doesn't clear the board.
Yep. Damage to Sif. Yeah, damage has begun. Let's not underestimate the ice barrier from blitzchung. I feel that the 5 armor is also just keeping him safe from the surprise lethals that Rogue can get. The Wicked Stabs and Alexstrasza not to be underestimated.
Care to make a wager, friend?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does look like it might come into play here, the Alexstrasza, in a big way, because there's still the bounce left over, the 10-word, etc. And yeah, the health total's ticked down. So like you say, without that 8 armor, he'd be just about in the danger range now.
Of popping off with the field contact, he has waited a long time and invested the Shadow Step in order to get good value out of that. But the Mankrik is somewhere in the bottom 5, and this is a very flimsy board. He has these brain freezes that he doesn't want to send into anything. And we can already look at Sif's remaining cards because that is just how fast the Rogue likes to roll. Both stabs, Mankrik, Jandis at the bottom, and Tenwu. So just looking at Jandis and Mankrik at the bottom 5, that is extremely unlucky. It's so hard to mount any type of relevant offensive against Mage without those cards.
Yeah, and he has also taken the first chunk of damage. Here comes the second piece of damage. Well, that is both masks gone in dealing with the board. So The minions have sort of done their shielding purposes, but not their attacking duties.
True. Okay, well, in a perfect world, blitzchung would love to draw cards, but I feel that's a bit optimistic because Sif not only has a dagger, but complete board initiative next turn. Blitzchung has a fair bit of armor right now, but the whole problem revolves around him not having Cram Session or the second Spring Water.
He's just working out probably whether Ice Barrier is actually any use. It probably is. Don't get me wrong, but we're at the stage now where Sif might just go Wicked Stab into Alex, into Bounce, into Alex, and never have to attack again. So I think he will take the barrier, but he's definitely got to consider the fact it might just never get any use.
Yeah. I do like the barrier as well, and Netherwind just to get him some sort of board presence. You could think about Entity as well, because Blitzchung has seen a lot of these small minions get played. The scary one into Entity is just Jandis getting a 2-1.
It's quiet.
Okay, so he did take CS and Barrier because the Rig Fair game almost never going to go off in a situation like this. Blitzchung, while he does lack card draw, has, I think, pretty wide knowledge on what Sif has to offer from this point onward. There's very few cards left in Sif's deck. So if Blitzchung thinks that he can get there with the Flame Strike, the Apexis to face, with the Fireball, then he doesn't necessarily need the card draw.
Yeah, and he's got to get on with it now, because now Sif is pretty much in range of sorting all this out. He's got his own counterspell, which could be absolutely huge.
Yeah, that is super relevant here if he decides to end the turn with it. That would mean that Blitzchung has to test with Devolving Missiles before he can go for one of these powerful cards.
Or just go, I lose counterspell and just play it.
Yeah. That draw, though, for Blitzchung is huge. He gets to go for the complete refresh on the mana, actually gaining 2 mana by playing Refreshing Spring Water. It's minions. Oh, Firebrand is really nice, but maybe not with this shape of board.
Yeah, it's actually not a very good roll from the font. The font's got, like most things at the moment, very limited pools of Discover. That seems to be a feature of the new meta that people are getting used to, and it was mentioned in the reveal when the set came out that that's what they were looking for, is sort of smaller pools so that you've got a good idea what things you might get. And the mage one for minions is actually really strong.
That's so unlucky. I was going to say Firebrand, even though there's that huge Mancrick on the other side, has a very good chance of getting rid of the field contact just by pointing Combustion at it. And if it had, then Blitzchung could comfortably point the Apexis Blast probably to the face at that point. But the fact that it completely missed now means that Blitzchung diverts to Rhyme Tongue instead, which is not the end of the world. He could still just try and bait out a big Flame Strike.
10 were a little bit awkward because Sif has used both Shadow Steps, so no Alex shenanigans available. So it looks like it's going to have to be Jandis shenanigans, which is still kind of good.
Yes, very good indeed. I mean, he can play the double Jandis with Tennu this turn. But this might be one of his few opportunities to get use out of this reactive golem that's been sitting in his hand since turn 4. I believe that has deal 3 damage to 2 minions.
Yeah, what a nightmare. Like, he was on such a great curve, and then that golem just completely sort of put a stop to it all, and he's had to play a totally different game.
Not a great Jandis. To be fair, most of Jandis' minions would fall prey to Flame Strike either way. But he's not got Rush or Frenzy on anything. Okay, that's something that's Flame Strike proof.
Yeah. But he's struggling here just to get anything to connect. This Flame Strike. Yeah, Blitzchung adjusts himself and sits forward. You never want your opponent to be doing that. You know they're about to do something absolutely terrifying to you.
This is the perfect timing that Blitzchung was holding on to Flame Strike this long for. You can see that there were several opportunities that he could have used it on smaller minions several turns ago, but he knew that he had the health to play with after playing that first Ice Barrier, not even going Trick Totem, because he has identified that probably the only way he loses from here is a disaster Trick Totem. Look at all this burn in hand.
Yep. He wouldn't know what this golem was either, maybe expecting it to have poison and damage or something, but this is good news for him too, that the golem basically is doing effectively nothing.
And blitzchung just has lethal in hand. That is 10 mana with all of the discounts and 10 damage from 2 Apexis plus Fireball. So blitzchung, after not having seen Alexstrasza or a Wand Thief to generate anything, already knew that he had this in the bag. And that might look a bit weird from Sif, why he didn't bother trading the 2 minions, but I do believe Sif's only out there was to just hope that blitzchung did not have the wide board clear. Because if Sif just played a single minion and took trades, then he was weak to something like Brain Freeze or even Apexis pointing at minions.
Yeah, very nicely played from blitzchung, looking very, very calm as well. Strange what being a Grandmaster for a couple of years would do to a mentality. Obviously he was a top player before that to get there in the first place, but he does look just comfortable and very focused as well from blitzchung.
Yes, you love to see it. Maybe riding off the momentum from his win of APAC Grandmasters last week, but that is just game 1 with what I believe is the most powerful remaining deck on both sides, the mage. I again feel like the Druid will be a struggling point because I feel that token Druid doesn't necessarily have a great matchup against Paladin, and even though on paper it might be favored against Rogue, there are certain double prize plunderer draws from Rogue that can get the job done as well. So that is what I'm going to have my eyes on here.
Yeah, like you say, like we talk about it a lot, not all wins in Conquest are built equally. So all day long we are likely to see Mage Band and Priest win, or Priest Band and Mage win very early on, and that is just not the whole equation. The equation is what are your other 2 decks, or what is your overbearing strategy on the whole match. And losing to Mage with Rogue is not necessarily a huge setback. Obviously, it takes away one of your extra lives. If you win with the Rogue, that's a great start. So you obviously still want those wins, but absolutely not much has changed with that win so far.
And while the Rogue did look a bit miserable there, don't let that kind of make you underestimate the overall power level of the deck, because the order and timing in which you get Mankrik, I feel, is extremely relevant in all of Rogue's matchups. The whole point of drawing with your field contact is just to make it so that you get to your combos pretty consistently, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything against decks that have wide board clear if you don't get the immediate damage plus the sticky minion from the 3/10. And so we could see Sif make a run back with that deck, but it will be maybe against blitzchung's token Druid.
Yeah, it looks like it's against the deck of champions, the token Druid from blitzchung, who did win that specialist last week. And I am one of the few people who actually thinks this is one of the best 4 decks. I think this is very underrated because in Grandmasters, the week it didn't do particularly well. It did get banned a lot of times, which, you know, if your deck's getting banned, it's kind of winning before it starts. So if it's not getting banned, if it's token Druid in particular and it's not getting banned, your opponent's ready for it. But if it is getting banned, that's a free win. So I think the deck is a bit more high power level than people realise. They think of it too much as a high roll deck only.
It's fair. I think it is kind of a symptom of the poor Druid draws making a player feel completely helpless, because there are certain draws that you're like, why did I even play this deck? It does absolutely nothing. There's very little flexibility with token Druid, I find, but there is a lot of refinement to be had when you do get the good hands. It still takes the optimal order of when you play the Soul of the Forest versus Pride's Fury, for example, when to go off with Gibberling. That gives extra percentages, and already this opening hand looks like a nightmare for Rogue with the Gibberling start.
Yeah, there's 2 things going incredibly well here for blitzchung. Firstly, he's got the Gibberling, absolutely important as anything in this. But secondly, he's against the Rogue. This is the matchup where the Druid is favoured, and the other 2 matchups not so much. This is his big chance to sort of put the match almost to bed here.
I was going to say the one thing he was missing was a guaranteed proc off Nature Studies for this turn, but he got a 1-cost spell, Adorable Infestation. If he wants, he can even commit the Innervate to play either a cheap spell from the Nature Studies or just the Marcel Cub. And I am all for completely committing, because the Innervate into Pride's Fury is still a turn away after that, and he just straight up gets the sentries as well, so his curve is spoken for next turn, even if Sif gets rid of a couple of Gibberlings.
Yeah, and although Rogue, when it gets to turn 2 or 3, or 3 or 4, sorry, can sometimes deal with a surprising amount of stuff, it can't deal with it this early. It's just too much.
However, it is big news that blitzchung doesn't have the perfect power of the wild to follow up. Sif completely unfazed by this, Octobot and pass. Usually, if I were in this situation against Rogue and I just got gibberlinged on one, I would at least emote well played there. But I think Sif has seen it all, and he does have a pretty good responding hand. He has Mancrick, Og Merchant, and Prize Plunderer to at least put some decent board presence and get rid of the spell burst gibberling.
The problem is next turn he's going to get the I think the fungal just gets ignored, doesn't it? Depending what picks up next turn, or fungal will reload. Either way, it's going to be just a disaster, I think. But yeah, going to start getting picked off, but needs to be picked off, because when that Prize Fury comes down, the game ends. If there's more than about 4 minions left.
Well, very awkward for Sif in that he can't quite fit in the dagger if he goes for the responding turn. So there's actually a world where this is just Kazakus and say that blitzchung doesn't have the power of the... I mean, he definitely doesn't have it because he would have played it last turn. And he doesn't have mana without another Innervate or Lightning Bloom to play one of the other buff spells. So I really like the Kazakus here.
Sure. Hear my disdain. There's nothing wrong with taking it. Absolutely. It's just he's in such trouble. I'm really fascinated to see if he can get out. And at some point, he's going to have to pick, like, he can't beat Arbor up. He probably already has decided that.
Right.
Just get rid of as many things as possible.
Sif has gotten very unlucky with these golem rolls. In this matchup, the deal 3 to 2 minions is ideal. If you can also get rush on your golem, that makes for a huge board swing. Sif there, I don't know if he ended up on freeze or draw 2, but that is very scary because every turn he leaves up minions is another chance for blitzchung to finally draw into Power of the Wild or just get to the Pride's Fury that's already in hand.
So this turn is just going to be the fungal, which is not good news for blitzchung, and he's actually going to seriously consider hero powering down one of the 2/1s before playing it. But yeah, you do this and you hope for double Lightning Bloom, or just hope your opponent has used up all their removal trying to get rid of this board last turn, because now things can turn around.
Yeah, it definitely had to be fungal there, I agree. He can get rid of everything and still end up with his 1/2 on the board on its own, which is not great. But for blitzchung, he was really just looking for the next round of threats there, Glowfly being ideal. But the fact that he discarded his second Gibberling is huge. Sif has this window to come back online now, and blitzchung has a very weak turn this turn.
Yeah. You could say that, and you did say that, and you would be right. Because which of these cards do you want? And which ones don't you want is more the question, I think, actually here. Like, which cards, after you play these double Arbor ups in the next 2 turns, which card never gets used? That might be a better way to look at this.
Yeah. I hate that I'm saying this, but I am looking at the Pride's Fury for just 1 minion because Arbor Up it also summons minions, and Pride's Fury is the only buff card that doesn't require, that requires a minion to already be on the board to get any value whatsoever. I guess Soul of the Forest as well, but right now I'm looking at immediate stats just to not get traded over by the Mancrick. Other than that, I would look at Power of the Wild for a 3/2, but I feel that's the shape of minion that Rogue can very easily destroy.
Yeah, I think you have to play it. And you also, if you're in the position where it's useful later, you're probably winning anyway or doing very well anyway. I'm not against this. This is very similar, slightly different shape. I'm with you. I kind of liked the Prize Fury shape better in terms of making it awkward, but this is basically the same thing.
Quite close, because if you give 5 health on your guy with the Pride's Fury, then if the golem has rush, then that's pretty awkward. It turns out blitzchung did end up with the minion that was slightly worse for Sif, but not bad at all. This is not a problem for Sif whatsoever. And now it is very simple for Sif. He can trade down as much as he feels he needs to, which is not necessarily even everything.
Jandis is super good, not because it's Jandis. Oh my goodness. Okay, she's super good because she's Jandis. I won't even finish that sentence. But also just putting things on there is just like each minion is a removal spell at this point. That was where I was going to go before Jandis just high rolled anyway.
Love the face attack from Sif. Singular minions from Druid, not a big threat at all. And one way you can lose the token Druid from this type of position is over trading, and then a wide glowfly catches you off guard.
This is the final roll. It's a pretty good roll. This is that prize Fury. Always like to look where decisions change games one way or the other. This does look better, in fairness, than Soul of the Forest would, I think.
Yep. Well, the Grey Bow is really the nail in the coffin here for blitzchung. Even if that didn't have Death Rattle, if Sif just removed every minion here, and he very easily can do that, between the Wicked Stab and just... He can't quite corrupt his elemental here, but even if it's just stepping Jandis, that's essentially removing minions because you put bigger stuff in their way.
Let's make something real.
See what's in the box this time.
Oh, a rush. Okay.
Crazy nonsense. Yep.
So he can dagger Krastenov, and then the dagger can deal the other 2 damage, but that's probably not as good as just going for Wicked Stab to get rid of the 6/3.
I really like that, actually, because then the dagger's there for next turn as well. But yeah, you're right.
Too soon.
You can think about it, like, it obviously gives him more utility for the next turn. Oh, okay, or he can just hold completely. He has seen 1 Arbor up, so even if blitzchung had the second one here, and even if he had the mana, which he technically does now with the Lightning Bloom, Sif is still safe. This is only 13 damage.
Yep, I like this a lot. Finding a way to get this on the board efficiently is quite nice. It should lock it out.
Blitzchung still has to do it, but tough luck.
Yeah, he's probably working out, because he doesn't die next turn, he's probably working out if he needs the mana for some sort of crazy fungal before doing this. I think he'll do it as well, but there might be some nutty fungal that he can think of with Lightning Bloom and Arbor up in hand that is better.
So if you got fungal into glowfly, yeah, it's just not enough, right?
I don't think so. But then nor is Arbor up Lightning Bloom right now enough either, against 5 rogue cards and a rogue board.
It's true. So blitzchung
he's in that
instead
sort of...
going for all of the value trades. Honestly, either line just does not get there, but I'm glad you mentioned the nutty fungal because clearly that's what blitzchung is thinking about.
Yeah, he probably doesn't even know himself what it is, but there's probably a combination of exactly the right cards that might keep you in this game, but going Bloom into Arbor almost certainly does not, so...
Efficient is sufficient.
Yeah, look at his face says that we've got this one right. That's exactly what he's thinking. Okay, this is going to be a good fungal. Oh, he didn't even get it.
Oh, all of that discussion for nothing, Lorinda. It probably had to be fungal into some nutty nature studies as well, but I don't even know what's in the pool for Druid at this point.
I mean, the solar eclipse into a fungal might have been quite interesting, to be fair.
So this looks like lethal. 11, 12, 13 on board. 2 wicked stabs are 10. Yeah, that's going to do it. The Thalmos...
You never count, Jim.
I mean, I used to think that, but then I also tunneled on the Flame Strike last game when blitzchung technically already had lethal 1 turn sooner.
Thanks, Subtle, for pointing that one out early. Yep. And also, I played a lot of OTK Demon Hunter now, and I realised that actually you always count is the truth of the matter. Because the number of times you miss by 1 mana, you don't necessarily have to count the damage. Sometimes that's 144 and you're just good. But yeah, counting is actually quite relevant when it's close. But I like to say you never count because it sounds great.
I've never gotten 144, Lorinda. My record on Demon Hunter is just 72. Am I a pleb?
I did it with my first game and I've not got close since.
First game? Okay. Beginner.
My first win, it was my second game, and I was actually on somebody's stream who was showing me because they were taking a break, and I'm like, I don't know how to play this deck, and they're like, unlucky, get on with it, here's 1,000 viewers. And I accidentally 144 to them. I didn't count that when I just pressed the button, and 144 flashed all over the screen, and I was really happy. And I'm sure we'll get a chance to see that at some point. There's quite a lot of Demon Hunter being submitted this week.
Yes, I think the deck is in a decent position. It's just that it's in a decent position against the rest of the field that isn't Mage and Priest, in my opinion. It's just like Rogue in that regard. And so if you are bringing it, I do expect that either Mage or Priest gets a ban. But we'll talk about that a bit more when the Demon Hunters do come out to play, because we are still in the Sif versus blitzchung series. Admittedly, after Sif got through that first wave of Gibberlings, it looked like he was nigh on unstoppable. But that is just kind of the way Druid functions. You have to choose a turn to go all in, and if you don't hit the card draw to follow up, or if your opponent has gotten the board, even if you do hit the card draw, it's a little bit too slow to come back.
And we talked about not all wins being equal, and that's a big win for Sif. It might be 1-1, but that was the easiest matchup for this Druid deck that you highlighted as the weakness gone. Now it's going to have much tougher time getting through the remaining decks.
I actually feel that Druid has a okay matchup against Mage, like not disastrous. Mages that run double combustion can be very problematic though. And depending on how late you get your Glowfly Swarm, mages can just laugh in the face of a bunch of 2/2s. They can play their 2-mana combustions twice and then get all the way back up to 6 mana with their super cheap refreshing spring water, that type of thing. And then once you start hitting the window where Flame Strike becomes a threat, it's really tough for a Druid because every board that isn't Pride's Fury gets caught up by Flamestorm.
The one thing the Druid does have going for it, if it is Druid, we haven't seen yet, is the timing. They do get to go for that crazy early start, obviously, if it's available, but you get a little bit of time against Mage, more than maybe you think, because Mask of Cthulhu into a Soul of the Forest board of 2/2s is actually kind of icky. You don't want to mask that, it doesn't clear, so then the Flame Strike comes in, but there's a Soul of the Forest. So if the Druid get to sort of turn 5 or 6 with some Innovates and some Lightning Blooms in hand and make a big board with 2 of their big power things with sort of Soul of the Forest plus 1 card, maybe they can get it done, but it is hard work.
I agree that Soul of the Forest is a super key card in the matchup because it kind of requires the mage to have Devolving Missiles alongside the clear card that they wanted to use that turn. And in that regard, it's kind of similar to Pride's Fury because that's a shape of minion that a single Flame Strike doesn't necessarily kill off. But it's a long time before blitzchung can necessarily even get 2/2s with Soul of the Forest all together on the same turn. You need to have the card draw plus the Lightning Blooms. But, you know, blitzchung's hit a decent amount of that. Is this ever Wild Growth?
I don't know. It could be any of those 3. Yep. Indeed, it is the Wild Growth. Planning to do that Soul of the Forest, Lightning Bloom, and cards that he will draw into, which is something you have to worry about in Druid a lot, is like, what am I going to draw? And half your deck is minions.
Blitzchung there, I think the choice was really just between Wild Growth and the Guidance because, like we were saying, he does have the tools to blow out a huge turn. I feel that the Lightning Bloom is kind of just outclassed by Wild Growth because he can play it this early, but the Guidance was also worth looking at because he didn't necessarily have the resources to back up that game plan. So Blitzchung is just saying, I am going to curve out the best I can and rely on my deck to give me the card draw, which is, you know, something you always got to do as Token Druid. Wait for the fungal, wait for the Guess the Wait.
Yeah, he could have taken the Guidance, taken both, be overloaded because it wouldn't have slowed him down. But he's gone for the quicker start, and I do like this, especially against Sif now. Has got that first flow off, I believe. So you are really on the clock now.
He can also combust away most of this board, although the Brain Freeze now provides him a separate option. I feel Combustion is very valuable in this hand, which it's his only several minion removal at the moment, where he can take Brain Freeze and Ping to leave just the 2/2.
Yeah, this Ras is going to be pretty useful going forward as well if blitzchung misses a beat with the Soul of the Forest. And both players being very careful.
That hard to activate in this deck because of the Primordial Studies, so that's just another piece of AoE for Sif.
And yeah, the mage doesn't have to win. It just has to stop the druid from winning, and then it will be able to win with a 5/5 from a Pexis Blast or anything. It doesn't necessarily have to point everything at face like it normally does.
Interesting decision point for blitzchung, because he can go for like a decent arbor up on 2 existing minions plus the 2 treants it generates this turn. But is that good enough against a mage that has already played flow, is my question.
I feel that he needs to now wait. He's in that section where he won't die in a hurry if he takes a turn or 2. So just draw a load of cards and go for an absolutely nutty turn would be my way forward. But it looks like he's going to go the other way and actually just make another board, try to get underneath the Flame Strike.
Yeah, that's exactly the right way of framing it. It's before Flame Strike is online, it can get a Pexis Blast, but only a single minion. And blitzchung is saying here, even if 3 minions stick, he'll be able to land a Soul of the Forest and just get there with incremental damage. I think this is a very disciplined token druid play, which it's really hard to identify the situations where you go for a board that looks mediocre, but is within the time frame or the window where you're not necessarily weakest to what the mage can play.
Yeah, it's a very... I think that's one of the things that people who don't play much druid don't realize. You do have a lot of agency over what happens in the game.
Pexis Blast very... Combustion very painful for blitzchung though. He's going back to the drawing board. Gibberling is a good way to start. Oh no! That's like... Was that one of 2 cards that could have cost less than Gibberling left in the deck?
Yeah, but should he have
Maybe
gone
3?
for it? Because if he goes for it, you're less likely to hit, but wouldn't it have been a great card to draw?
That is spoken like a true stats guy, Lorinda.
Something you have to do with this deck sometimes, but he's not under pressure, so I think he's right to play for the extra card at this point, just to be clear. But sometimes he can just go for the immediate, I need this exact card, so it doesn't matter what the odds are. You just don't tell me the odds, just go for the card that I need is the card I try and hit. But I think he felt he had a little bit more time, so he didn't bother to go for the crazy play.
And as if Sif wasn't in a good enough situation, he can actually do the preemptive Raz here. That's something that never gets answered when you've already seen 1 lunar eclipse. So the only way Druid can kill that from hand is to like discover something off of nature studies, which is very, very unlikely. So I kind of like getting the Raz down online. He can even play Solarian or Geomancer alongside it. You don't even need your other Apexis Blast to be active at this point.
Yeah, look at all the cards piling up. He's like, how shall I kill thee? I know, with these cards.
Yeah.
True mastery.
Preemptive Raz locks out any chance of development from blitzchung. And we can already call it a game, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, because the Ras. I was just about to say no, Gia, because look at all these things that could change. But no, the Ras kind of ends it here.
Blitzchung can lunar eclipse, I guess, the Cobalt Geomancer. This is so sad. Come up with 4 2/2s, a 1/1. All of them with Soul of the Forest, and then a 1/1 as well. I think you take as many minions with Soul on them as possible instead of 2/2 on everything, because Raz with a single spell damage minion gets through anything at this point. Although Blitzchung's in a bad enough situation where he maybe has to hope that there's no further spell damage minion from Sif's side of the board.
Time waits for no one.
Ordering a little bit.
Yeah. And what do you take as well? Like, are you assuming that first board gets cleared out? So yeah, that's what I was wondering. You know the first board's dying, so why bother? Make the second board harder instead.
Yeah, this is very smart. So what Blitzchung is saying here is that if Sif wants to clear everything, he has to trade into smaller minions for the first half, because Raz can only exclusively deal at the end of the turn. And that's maybe asking for a little bit too much. But the thing is, Sif, it's not like he has to clear everything here. Blitzchung is top decking. So from Sif's perspective, in all likelihood, Blitzchung only has this much damage that he's already showing. It will be a bunch of 2/2s at the end, but between the secrets discovered, it is mostly fine. Sif is just calculating how much does a top deck Arbor up hurt him.
Right, yeah. He's probably looking also... well, he's not now because he can't play it, but the mask was an interesting point at one point there as well.
Looks like he will be going for a combustion with ping play. All right. What he's doing here is removing the greatest full minions, full meaning first and second layer, the largest amount of those, which effectively minimizes Blitzchung's immediate damage output.
It just feels like he's hanging on, yeah, that's pretty much, I mean, we've called it a little while now, but that is kind of the final throw now.
Yeah.
Does he have to put... Yeah. And what do you do? Like, where do you go? Do you go face? In some aggressive decks, you go face and hope to draw your weapon or hope to draw your burn spell, but those things are not things that Druid has. So you can't even put the damage into the face and just hope to find a miracle 12 right now. So do you... I think you have to concede. You don't have to concede, but what do you do?
I think you're asking the difference between a 0.0001% to win and a 0.00001% to win.
I think that's a fair statement, yeah. I would like to know. Which one is it, Gia? Come on.
I don't know. Probably Altiface. And then rely on nature studies to do something insane. But then Swipe's not even in the pool anymore, so you can't get any burst damage.
No, absolutely. I think that's the same. And it's 2-1 to Sif, and that Druid, as you highlighted, is proving to be quite a sticky problem now for blitzchung, who did win, as we keep saying, the entire of APAC region Grandmasters with Druid last week.
Yes, in the specialist format. And make no mistake, it was not necessarily specialist for Blitzchung because he just never played his secondary or tertiary. He just stick to this exact list the entire time, which I do think is so consistent for a reason. It has to be built that way with all the 2-outs because the deck is so heavily draw dependent. But you can see, I think this was the real turning point for Sif. The time that Blitzchung decided to go all in with just a mediocre Arbor up, but if there's not a combustion, can probably get there over 2 turns. And then Sif immediately had the combustion to answer, which left Blitzchung scrambling for a way to rebuild.
Yeah, and after that really good start, he's now got to get a win. What's the remaining deck? It is the Paladin, which, yeah, Druid hates Paladin. And of course, he still has to get a win with his Rogue as well. But we're focusing on the Druid because that is the weaker of the decks. That's something I think that everybody will be looking at this weekend. Priest and Mage, they're going to get some wins. What are the other decks? What did you choose to do? And how did you tech your Priest and your Mage?
And I do agree with you that the Paladin is a strong favorite in the matchup, even more so than the old Libram Paladin versus Token Druid matchup, which I feel is a little bit more contentious, but I would still give to the Libram Paladin because they have early minions into Oh My Yogg, that type of thing. But Aggro Paladin has very consistent early minions with the secret package as well, and not only that, they have ways to buff their early minions into big threats, so they can actually threaten lethal before the first glowfly even comes down from Druid sometimes.
Yeah, and even some of the irritating, I mean, Righteous Protector is just so annoying to get through. If the Druid gets a chance, it's got to hit that thing twice before it can even go to your face, which just buys more time for the Paladin all the way. Very difficult indeed, but not impossible. That's why, that's why we play the games, I guess.
Yes. What I do think Blitzchung has a chance to win this matchup is with the opener he had against the Rogue, which was just all in on Gibberling from turn 1. That's the type of board that Paladin can't necessarily answer all at once. However, he will not be on the Token Druid, so if Blitzchung is going to win this series, he might have to talk about that a little bit later. But for now, he's going to start with the Rogue, which I feel is a much more amenable matchup.
So much more amenable than very bad. Does that make it favoured, do you think? Or just it's not as terrible?
I do feel like it is favored for the rogue, but it is not super straightforward. Rogue needs to have good early removal and then hit their card draw in the late game, which, to be fair, that is what the deck is built to do. But the Paladin shouldn't be underestimated because these newer builds have a bit more teeth in the late game as well. We're seeing from Sif, his package includes Alex, Straza, and Hammer of the Naru at the top end. No Ogre-mancers, which is very good for blitzchung, but the Blessing of Authority is a big problem card for Rogue. If you're not running the secret version, if they can stick an authority on any minion, that's well above the range your prize plunder can get through.
That's interesting to me. Yeah, I just think the Paladin's a slight favourite, but then they're two of the decks that I haven't played as much, especially against each other. So I will defer to your knowledge on this one, as I always should, because that makes a lot of sense for me to do that.
Don't sell yourself short, Neil. I don't play that much Priest compared to you, so I would defer to you on that one.
I don't think anybody plays as much Priest compared to me, except they play it better when they do. But yeah, already a decision for blitzchung. Does he want, against his aggressive Paladin, to occupy the board straight away, or does he want to not use his coin? It's already an awkward decision, especially with this really weird hand.
Yeah. So the coin Foxy Fraud turn 1 checks a possible Crab Rider from Sif, but usage of the coin is very important in this matchup because not only does it activate combos, it makes your prize plunder stronger, and that one extra breakpoint can be a big deal in this matchup. I think blitzchung has decided to be a little bit slower here because Sif had the very rare opener of no 1-drop from Paladin. That's huge.
Yeah, and the coin quite often turns into a prep later on as well when it gets yogged. I was trying to find the exact numbers, but it's like 1 time in 7 or something ridiculous.
Okay, prize plunder shows up. That's huge here. So if blitzchung likes... It's actually not that clean because of the possibility of Galloping Savior on the other side. blitzchung instead just going to go for a trade where he can and get the Octobot down preemptively. This is huge. The Octobot is very difficult to answer this early. Even Crab Rider with Hand of Adal doesn't hit the 4 attack breakpoint.
Yeah, and reducing this hand, I'm just looking at it now, would be absolutely licensed to just go straight through the deck. There are 12 0-mana spells, by the way, in Standard. I just had a quick look.
Good tidbit to know. If running... Oh, okay. So he's pulled Oh My Yogg and Reckoning. I didn't even know that he was running that in the deck until I checked. That is a very rare choice of a secret. And not likely to get a lot of value in the near future because I feel that blitzchung won't be pushing face until he feels he's got a very confident hold on the board. And so all of his minions that can deal 3 damage are probably just going to trade up into Sif's minions.
Yeah, Reckoning absolutely not for this matchup, I feel, as well. There's plenty of ways you can just throw away a 3-attack minion if you need to protect something bigger. And most of the time, it's not bigger. You're just hitting them with sort of mediocre rubbish anyway.
It's such a big deal that Sif did not pull Galloping Savior here because that's the card that somewhat makes blitzchung's turn harder.
1 in 6 chance of getting more mana here.
Oh, silence. Okay. That's actually pretty good. Cause
it is, but it also stopped what he wanted to do this turn himself, but it also stops Sif's next turn.
Too quiet.
It's just going to go for it. So this
Not
needs to
necessarily
work.
sure how it stops what blitzchung wants to do this turn, which is just draw a bunch of cards with the field contact. I think he might have been a bit more stressed out that there might still be a Galloping Savior on the other side.
Care to make a wager, friend?
Yeah, I was just worried that he wouldn't be able to defend the field contact, but he probably wouldn't have been able to do that anyway, or he couldn't tend with it worst case anyway.
Come, friend. Let's see what you've got.
Bit of a close decision as to which card he wants to return to his hand. The Tenwu is not strictly like Shadow Step. the one cost only works for the turn that you get it back into hand. So he's just playing for as much tempo as possible here, and that is exactly what Sif was waiting for with his Crab Rider. However, blitzchung has put enough stats on the board that this isn't as clean as it looks.
Yeah, and it's going to get silenced, so you might as well just get rid of things with it. And his next turn for Sif, if he doesn't pick anything up, is an absolute mess. There's nothing going on in the hand at all.
It's a disaster. What he needs to pull this back is to somehow stick a minion and then top deck the Blessing of Authority, is how I see it. Can he even afford to take trades from this point? I guess he's seeing both Prize Plunder. No, sorry, just one.
Must move quickly.
If you trade into a 1-attack minion, Brain Freeze is a breakpoint. You trade into the 3-attack Prize Plunder / this Broomstick that blitzchung is running is also a breakpoint / Guardian Og Merchant. So there's punishes either way. Sif in the end just deciding to take the most damage off the other side of the board, settling in for a longer game. Although I do feel that the long game favors the rogue.
Yeah, and I feel that this game may not even be that long anyway at the moment, just because... Oh, not a good Jandis though. But unless Sif picks something to do next turn, then blitzchung, especially with that broom that you highlighted, and we're going to see that a lot today, by the way. I think that's in quite a few people's rogues from out of the blue. I think the rogue just starts to take over next turn.
Out of the blue? What do you mean? They just watched Surrender's Tertiary and found out that Broomstick's the nuts.
Just weird how the card vanished. I think people in all decks forgot that Broomstick existed because it's so crazy. We're in a minion versus minion meta to the large extent when you take away the priest and mage that we keep talking about. They kind of don't matter because they're going to win. Let's have some rush minions for 1 mana.
As long as blitzchung does not play the devolving into Oh My Yogg, I think he's got this game on lock, because I did say Sif's best out from this point is to try and stick something, then top deck Blessing of Authority. However, we do know that this type of board he built is very sticky, but the devolving Discover from blitzchung is just so difficult for Sif to come back from.
Yeah, and he's not going to have time to pick up the prime. I think it's going to take too long to get more Murlocs. That's sometimes an out.
Double Polkel, get a rush minion as well. It wasn't even Oh My Yogg from Sif, so blitzchung, I believe, should just know about the Reckoning now because Avenge didn't proc on the first egg kill.
Yep, deck lists are revealed, of course, to the players in these sort of tournaments. Not like Ladder where you have to guess, so... Yep, absolutely. Just make sure he puts the Jandis's Mirage, are they? I can't remember what they're called.
One of those
Right
things.
one. It's one of those words.
Alright, blitzchung not even gonna bother with the missiles because fair play, even if there is authority here, that's when blitzchung can go for the devolving.
Right, and also didn't trade away the Murloc just in case the Prime comes back to bite him. Leave that on the board, leave it with Divine Shield as long as you can.
Sure.
And keeping the devolving is going to pay off here.
Sort of. I mean, you could have prevented the 8 altogether from taking a value trade, but in the long run it works out the same way because blitzchung just has so much of an advantage in terms of resources. Imagine Sif would I was gonna say trade over the other Polkelt, but it doesn't really matter because Krasinov would just trade up in the end, so Sif just removing the possibility of blitzchung even buffing a weapon.
And this is the sort of difficult Hearthstone that I like, where it doesn't matter if you get it wrong. But this is actually a difficult turn to play correctly, but it just doesn't matter, right? You've got
correctly
so many cards.
as in like optimized, but there's many ways to play that you still win the game.
Yeah, exactly. I could win this game a lot of the time, and I doubt I would optimize the play. Yeah. It would be absolutely fine, though. Get out of that with your dragon and your knight.
don't see a way back into this for Sif. The entirety of his deck, other than the Kazakus, is built such that you already assume that you're ahead on board and then you can cash out with the buff cards. This is not the case.
Reporting for duty.
Even a 2-minion Flame Strike is great here, I think. If I'm blitzchung, I just want to prioritize setting up lethal for next turn with Alexstrasza. Given that Sif doesn't run any healing, so I would have preferred to see everything head to the face.
Yeah.
Everything meaning the 4 damage and the man crick here. If he can get Sif down to 8, it really doesn't matter anyway, though.
That's also a good point, yeah. It's not like he's going to suddenly heal back up. It's not that sort of Paladin today. Although we will be seeing some Librams as well. We've seen a lot of stuff out there in the meta. I believe we actually have the meta analysis in from Wicked Good, who does a lot of this sort of thing. And there's 31% aggro, 10% secret, and 4% Libram Paladin, and some other Paladins that aren't classified because they're probably rubbish or something.
Declassified paladins. I'd like to see, though. There's just a whole spectrum of paladin because even the different archetypes have some overlap with each other. Like, how many of the secrets do you run? Do you run sword at all? How many convictions do you run? I've gotten blindsided by conviction in Libram Paladin once or twice this past week. So there's many ways to build the deck. Obviously, compared to ladder, in a tournament format, there is less of a surprise factor as your opponents can see the deck lists.
Yeah, and that makes it a bit more important that you get the right secrets, the best secrets in there, rather than trying to just surprise people, because there is no surprise. Just looking through this, the Priest is the most brought class, but Rogue is 2nd, Warrior 3rd, and Mage all the way down in 4th, but still 68%, by the way. Again, thanks to Wicked Good for those stats.
Thank you, indeed. And the rogue number surprises me as well because I feel that the deck is not well positioned against Priest and Mage, but I do think it's got a great matchup against nearly the rest of the field, scratching OTK Demon Hunter. Paladin being a big one. I think Paladin is assumed to be a pretty popular bring given that it's been a force on ladder recently.
Absolutely, yeah, and the rest, no real surprise, apart from maybe 10% of the field, the Brave Souls brought the Warlock, and presumably 9.999% of those people are trying to target Priest, and the other one is Yala.
Is he not trying to target Priest?
I mean, he tries to target everything. He just brings Warlock and then targets whatever Warlock targets, I think. Okay. That's his plan.
Oh,
but yep,
we had that very one-sided match out of the way now, and we get to the headliner, is what I think this Paladin versus Druid game will be, because I feel that the Paladin has so many tools to make sure the Druid has a very bad time. Not only do they have early minions, 1-drops consistently gotten from the first day of school, the fact that they can buff their Crab Riders with Hand of a Doll means that they can threaten lethal before the Glowflies even come online. If a Blessing of Authority sticks, Druid is almost never dealing with that. The class simply does not have the tools for large minions.
Yeah, and on top of all of that, as if that wasn't enough, the Druid struggles to kill you if it does stick a board for one turn through all the taunts and general mess that's going on the other side of the board. So if you get all the way through that stuff that Gia just talked about, the Paladin still sometimes has this one last sort of end of the horror movie, comes back to life and tries one more time to stop beating them.
Okay, though, promising opener from blitzchung with the Glowfly Keep, and he has Lightning Bloom, so there can be a way to even get under the Paladin that's trying to get under your Glowfly Swarm, which is to just play Glowfly on turn 2. However, he will only have, what, 4 flies if he does that on average?
Yeah, which might be enough, and he's going to have to give it some attention, but...
It's certainly worth thinking about.
Yeah, he'll also be trying to look into how to sort of solar eclipse something good here as well. There's a lot to do here with this eclipse. Oh,
oh
wow.
Okay, so Blitzchung's going to wait. Before the Innervate draw, I was gonna say Glowfly looked pretty bad this turn because it didn't value trade with anything, and then you wouldn't have the mana next turn to even hero power. With the Innervate draw, that was a consideration. But in the end, given that the flies just straight up died to the Divine Shield and the 2/2, Blitzchung says this is not good enough. I'm going to save this Lightning Bloom to pair with, say, a Soul of the Forest so that when he does get onto the board, it's going to be very durable.
If seriously considering not swinging here as well, just saving those 2 charges in case he needs to take some stuff down. But eventually does do it.
May the light grant you peace.
I think he did pull Avenge here? I'm not necessarily sure. Sorry, the Reckoning is a 1 of. Oh, sorry, it's Galloping Savior then, which honestly, everything but Reckoning is a huge pain for Blitzchung here. If you remove something, Avenge potentially goes off, he plays a spell, it potentially just gets turned into something useless. And yeah, next turn, the mana makes it such that Sif can start buffing minions or going for Kazakus, that type of thing.
I love how Blitzchung just spent the first 10 seconds of that turn with his hands as far away from his mouse as he could get them and just stared at the board trying to work out what to do. Because this hand is about as complicated as it gets for the Druid. Or was. It's a bit more simple now, obviously.
Because he was scared of Oh My Yogg, got the news that it wasn't there though, so this is still a slightly problematic board for Sif. He can take quite a few value trades if he even wants to put the Hand of a Doll on the 1/1. That's a possibility.
Yeah. The overload comes into play more often than you would think with Druid as well. Next turn, not a lot going on. The Thorn Growth will have to be just a couple of 1/2s most likely just to keep the illusion of pressure ticking along, I guess.
Sif here chose to end with the buff on the Murloc instead, which is, I think, just an optimization from putting it on the 1/1 instead. He'll end up with 3 minions, but a little bit more stats.
You can have 2 1/2s, or you can kill your opponent's thing, or you can innovate and see what happens with Yogg, because you might turn it into more mana.
Yeah.
He went for the play where he knew what was going to happen.
So he now knows that there is no Avenge of either of these secrets. The first one is not Oh My Yogg, the second one could still be. But no matter which of those secrets are in play, even if there were no secrets, an 8/8 egg is hugely problematic.
Yeah, it kills you in 2 turns with the help of the hammer, so...
Oh,
Oof.
oh okay.
His face was like, oh, okay, so that just happened.
Lost a minion. Every minion is relevant from this point because Blitzchung is simply going to ignore the egg from this point, I think. Oh, Crab Rider Conviction.
He's going to trade. There's a line where you play Yogg and hit them in the face twice here.
Yeah. I mean, the Crab Rider can take trades, and then the egg with 11 attack can go face and set up for 2 lethal. There's also a line where you just equip the hammer and call it a day.
Yep. You'll see where he goes. He's going with the trading. I kind of liked, but I hadn't added it up, playing a Yogg so you didn't get Arbor up. The trouble is with 6 mana, Blitzchung could just throw away his studies and still Arbor up and then kill you. So the play wasn't available, I think.
A very disciplined play. I mean, it was technically available. Of course, like you can say, you don't have both Arbor up plus the Adorable Infestation. I'm not going to play around that. But we can see from Sif, he is choosing to play around as many things as he can, which, it's a bit iffy with the quality of his hand at the moment.
But he still doesn't have the hammer as backup. He's got the broomstick as backup too, if needed for some dudes later. I think he's going to be okay. But yeah, it can be fatal with Druid. You can't say, I don't think you have it. One thing that Druid does really, really well is have it.
True enough. Okay, again, blitzchung already knew this was not Avenge. On his mind will be Oh My Yogg for the second secret, and the first one Galloping or I guess Reckoning, but he doesn't really care about Reckoning at the moment. Oh no!
That's the second of his own minions he's blown up.
And also one spell played. So if he wants to do what I think he was looking at of something like Solar Eclipse with the Thorn Growth, he'll be proccing the Galloping Savior.
Probably still worth it though, because the Thorn Growth does have the taunt, so he should be okay, even if it is a Savior like unlucky. You've got Arbor up next turn. With Solar Eclipse, that is a lot of damage next turn with that pairing.
Time waits for no one.
I agree that it's probably still worth it, but I feel like, I mean, he just didn't attack face there. I was gonna say, you attack face there if you're okay with the 3-4 proccing. When blitzchung didn't attack first, I guess he was gonna trade into the 3-4, which I was going to question, but that felt like a straight up missed opportunity.
Yeah, you can't afford to miss that damage if your board was going to half hang about. Of course, it kind of hasn't, so...
Okay. This is a strong turn though. Lunar into Solar Arbor up. Feels like blitzchung's back in this.
Yeah, although he doesn't have much more buff. This is kind of it, and there is a McGurgle in the other hand from Sif, so...
It's a lot. It's threatening lethal though, so... Okay, well, blitzchung has to think about breakpoints of Sif's own here, because Sif is currently showing, what, 15 with the weapon? So even second conviction is another 6. That's just 1 off of lethal. That's why blitzchung sends it face.
Yeah, and also his own numbers didn't add up very well if he didn't go face, so it worked on both counts there, but well worth checking both of them.
Wow. If getting a rush there was so clutch, but he is still just dead to Pride's Fury and Hero Power. I can't believe that blitzchung managed to pull this back. Was it off the back of the egg trading? Was it too much respect? It's so tough to say because you can never really tell what's in blitzchung's hand.
Yeah, I think blitzchung just did the numbers very, very carefully and just got it right there. That last attack showing how right he got it. It's exact lethal. If he'd made the trade, he probably runs out of stuff and doesn't win. And most players take a nice swig of water after they win, but I think blitzchung seems to be drinking, I don't know, an entire cup of coffee or something in one go. So that'll keep him going for the rest of the day.
I don't know, Lorinda. It's only round 1. There is plenty more Hearthstone action to be had, but I definitely agree that some form of caffeine is necessary for those of us in the APAC region. But well played to blitzchung. That matchup felt very difficult as soon as this first Blessing of Authority hit. And at the time, I didn't want to call the egg trading bad. It was just shocking because it was a lot of damage and a chance at a 2-turn lethal setup, but very likely Sif was just thinking of some breakpoint to die on the turn that he did take the trade and ended up just dying a little bit later instead.
But yeah, on that last turn, yeah, just to remember that it's been pointed out to me as well, but yeah, he did miss that damage that you highlighted earlier in the game. But on the last turn is what I was talking about, where he had to decide whether to go face or not was the right decision. Well worked out. The other damage was straight up just misplay, obviously.
Sif had gotten another rush on this, could have been a different story, but with Bluegill Warrior out of the pool, it is very hard to get that much immediate removal from Murlocs.
Yeah, there's
that does
not much
mean blitzchung
charge.
goes off. Oh, goes up to 1-0. Very, very impressive. It's just another continuation of his streak from Specialist.